Welcome to Chapter 16, Managing Human Resources Globally. So global HRM is companies are expanding globally. We all know that. Even from the NFL is trying to put football games overseas, so that's their expansion. We're exporting more products, building facilities, entering alliances. There's trade agreements that facilitate global activities like NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and the WTO, World Trade Organization. HRM needs to understand the laws and the customs, especially of the international workforce. So as companies in the US and Europe outsource jobs in order to keep costs low to countries such as India, they continue to see employment rates hold steady or even rise. So HRM in the global environment, employees in the international workforce, a couple terms you need to understand. Parent country is the country in which the organization's headquarters is located. The host country is other than the parent country in which the organization operates a facility. Third country is neither the parent nor the host, and expatriates are what we call the employees who are assigned to work in another country. So the company I used to work for, we had people we had a subsidiary in Europe. And from time to time, some of our employees would go over there for a long-term assignment, and they are considered expatriates. When starting your career, would you be interested in taking a job in another country? What would be the biggest motivator in your decision? Would you think that it'd be fun and exciting? Yes, if you knew the language. You'd be too nervous about learning about other countries' culture, language, and customs. And no, I wouldn't want to leave my family. I actually had the opportunity to work for a time in Amsterdam. I thought it was great, really. Employers in global marketplace, international organizations set up organizations in one or more foreign countries. Multinationals build facilities in many countries to minimize production and distribution costs. So if we have, like Amazon has various warehouses around the country in order to shorten the time for delivery, and that's their big selling point, is they get things to you really quickly. If you look at those warehouses as countries, they would be building facilities multinationally. Global organization locates facility based on the ability and efficiently and flexibly produce product or service using cultural differences as an advantage. So here's figure 16.1 from your book that shows you the levels of global participation and the differences. Okay, transnational HRM system. Decisions have to be made from a global perspective. If we have an international company, it includes managers from many countries, decisions based on ideas contributed by people representing a variety of cultures, and the decisions have to be balanced with uniformity with flexibility. So what are some factors affecting HRM in international markets? First, there's culture, a community set of shared assumptions about how the world works and what ideals are worth striving for. Greatly affects the country's laws. Cultural influence may be expressed through customs, languages, religions, and so on. Influences what people value, so it affects people's economic systems and efforts to invest in education, and it may determine the effectiveness of our policies. So the book talks about Hofstede's 5 dimensions. They look at individualism versus collectivism. What does the country value more, individualism or collectivism? Power distance, uncertainty avoidance, masculinity versus femininity, and long-term and short-term orientation. In Taiwan, a country that is high in collectivism, meaning that they work for the society as a whole, the society is more important than the individual, co-workers consider themselves more as group members instead of individuals. So organizations must prepare managers to recognize and handle cultural differences, recruit managers with knowledge of other cultures, provide training to existing managers' cultural knowledge. And that's a huge thing for human resource. A huge responsibility is that if we're going to send people into other countries, we have to make sure they're adequately prepared and have a decent amount of cultural knowledge. Organizations must select expatriates carefully. They must be able to adapt under new environments. Education and skill level. The U.S. has a growing need for knowledge workers. Labor markets in many countries are very attractive because they offer high skill levels and low wages. Educational opportunities vary per country. Education and skill levels of the country's labor force affect how and the extent to which companies operate there. Their economic system provides many incentives or disincentives for developing the value of the labor force. Labor costs are relatively high in developed, wealthy nations, so it impacts compensation, recruiting, and selection decisions. Income tax differences between countries complicate pay structures when they cross national boundaries. We have to look at political legal systems. Countries, government, and laws impact HRM. Dictates requirements for certain practices, training, compensation, hiring, firing, and layoffs all have requirements in various countries. Organizations must gain expertise in host countries' legal requirements and ways of dealing with the legal system. Host country nationals can be hired to help in the process. So what are some relevant issues? Local market pay rates and labor laws. You know, companies always move offshore a lot of times to try and save money, to have, call centers in India or Indonesia or someplace else that is less developed than the United States. And they come under fire even if they pay the local rates for labor. People say, you're trying to rip the people off and should be paying them higher. What do you think? So how do we decide where to locate our international facilities, the cost and ability of qualified workers, financial and operation requirements, and outsourcing may be involved. So qualities associated with success in foreign assignments are the ability to communicate in the foreign country, flexibility, enjoying a challenging situation, and support from family members. I have a friend who is an accountant who is fluent in Japanese. He can pretty much write his own ticket for any company because there aren't many CPAs that are fluent in Japanese. So look at your selling points. Okay, so the emotional stages associated with a foreign assignment, there's the honeymoon phase, culture shock, recovery, and finally adjustment. So Rachel is an expatriate working in Japan. She is feeling very uncomfortable in her surroundings. She often feels as if she said the wrong thing. So which emotional stage is she in of expatriation? Is it the honeymoon, culture shock, learning, or the adjustment phase? Sure, it's B. In the second stage, the employee's mood declines as he or she notices more unpleasant differences and experiences feelings of isolation, criticism, stereotyping, and even hostility. As the mood reaches bottom, the employee is experiencing culture shock, the disillusionment and discomfort that occurred during the process of adjusting to a new culture with its norms, values, and perspectives. So how do we train and develop a global workforce? Training programs have to be established for international workforce, establish objectives for its training and its content, ask what training techniques and strategies and media to use, identify interventions and conditions in which must be in place for training to meet its objectives, identify who in the organization should be involved in reviewing and approving the program, and consider international differences among trainees. Okay, there's a table 16.1 talks about the effects on culture on training design. Make sure you go through and read that as you read through the book. Cross-cultural preparation, training to prepare employees and family members for an assignment in the foreign country. It's not just the employee that needs help, it's the whole entire family that will be going with the employee. Training is necessary for all three phases of the assignment: preparation for departure, the assignment itself, and preparation to return home. Management methods must consider legal requirements and local business practices and local and national cultures when establishing method. These factors may include many differences: which behaviors are rated, how and the extent with which performance is measured, Who's going to perform the rating, and how is feedback going to be provided? Pay structure. Market pay structures can differ substantially across countries in terms of pay level and relative worth of jobs. The difference causes dilemmas for global companies. Should pay levels and differences reflect what workers are used to have in their own countries? Should pay levels and differences reflect the earnings of colleagues in the host or the domestic country? Here's figure 16.3, earnings in selected occupation groups in 3 countries. I'm not a fan of a 3D chart here because I think it's hard to read, but I think you can see that managers are much higher paid than the clerical, craft, and service workers. Okay, decisions impact the company's costs and the ability to compete. When comparing wages, companies must consider differences in education, skills, and productivity. Cultural and legal differences can affect the structure. Oops, bounced right down there. Incentive pay, we just talked about incentive pay when we were talking about pay a couple chapters ago. Bonuses and stock options are common kinds of incentives because they are awarded differently per country. Employee benefits, you have to consider the laws of each country involved, as well as the employee's expectations and values. Okay, the average hours worked in selected countries. The United States is about 1,800 hours per year compared to Mexico, which is about 2,500. Big difference, huh? You would have thought we were the highest, right? Or Japan, maybe. Labor relations, global companies often need to work with unions in more than one country and establish policies and goals for labor relations, overseeing the labor agreements, monitoring labor performance, the day-to-day decisions that are usually handled by the foreign subsidiary, and cultural differences affect negotiations. So selecting expatriate managers. Managers need technical competence in their area. So my friend who's the accountant, the CPA who speaks Japanese needs to be competent in accounting if that's the position I'm sending him for. Adapting to new cultures requires maintaining a positive self-image and feeling of well-being, fostering relationships with the host country levels, perceiving and evaluating the host country's environment accurately. So we need cross-cultural training on how to behave in business settings in the foreign country, information about practical matters like housing, schooling, recreation, shopping, and healthcare. One of our employees at the company I used to work for went to Amsterdam for a 3-year assignment. I was only there for a short period, but he was there for 3 years. And they worked with the family to find schooling for their children. There was an American school there that they were able to get their children into. Potentially they might have to learn a new language, develop career development and coaching, and help navigate the challenges. Requires clear goals for overseas assignment. What are you going there to do? Requires frequent evaluation of whether expatriate is on track to meet those goals. Communication technology is very useful for this. HR should work with managers to develop measurement criteria for performance and success. Compensating expatriates, balance sheet approach is most often used. It gives the manager the same standard of living in his home country, plus extra pay for convenience and locating overseas. Now, that guy who went over there, they paid his mortgage in the U.S. and paid for his housing in Amsterdam. So he was much better off in the long run. Plus, his salary was probably a little bit more because it was technically a higher position than he held in the United States that he was going for. Total pay divided into 4 components of the pay package. Base salary, tax equalization allowance. So if you're in a high tax country, you make sure you give the employee more money so that they come out about their net pay is about the same. You have to look at benefits and allowances. So now it's time to bring them home. It's time to repatriate them. It's the process of preparing expatriates to return home from a foreign assignment. 2 activities help make the transition smooth. Communication, where they receive information and recognizes changes at home while abroad. Validation, expatriate receives recognition for overseas service upon return home. That's it. That's the end of chapter 16. You do have an assignment for this in the assignments not attached to the book. Make sure you check it out.